Hello and welcome to yet another version of the budget series that I started yesterday. And I thought let's just follow up with some budget token lists that I drew up today and play tested for quite a bit. And I feel fairly confident to share this list, and it does all the good things we know and love from the big Praxis token lists, but it has some more budget options in case you still lack efficient cards or the big finishing cards the deck usually runs. And as we did last time, this is kind of aiming at newer players or maybe players with a smaller collection than the average veteran crawling around in Eternal right now. So let's just go over the cards real quick and get some idea and a sense of what this deck tries to do. And maybe you're even familiar with a concept from another CCG like Eternal or Magic or even Hearthstone, where other token strategies worked out rather well. Let's start with the Grenadin drone. This little guy is our friend and helps us build big, overwhelming boards rather quickly early on in the game. Due to the summon effect that plays another 1/1 Grenadin the moment this guy hits the board. And yeah, he's basically our bread and butter unit that we want to have early on and just build our board and get going. Oni Ronin is in here, even though the synergy might look lackluster for now. But to be fair, there are not many impressive units in fire or time early on, so we have a hard time deciding on getting more synergy in or getting some good stuff in there. And Oni Ronin definitely hits that good stuff window just fine. And he's a potential candidate in case you move further and upgrade your deck to be cut from this list. But for now, we're quite happy to have him join our ranks for now and getting some decent Warcry values off, making our other units bigger. Ticking Grenadin has a weird role, and as you can see, he has a 1/1 stat line, so he's basically another Grenadin drone, basically. But the entomb effect of dealing free damage to the enemy player is rather convenient for us, since we're trying to finish the game early on, or getting as much damage on the enemy face as possible. Disassembler has really good synergy with the Grenadin tribal, basically. And what we try to do here is to just play them out when we have some Grenadins on the board. And even if our small guys die to being blocked or being killed by spells or harsh rule or whatever, this assembler will make sure that their Grenadins at least get their 1 damage off, because when the Grenadin dies, we deal 1 damage to the enemy player. So even if we get board stalled or have bigger units against us, we will be able to deal damage onto the face by sacrificing our small little guys. Recano Outlaw. I remember this card back when I started, and it's one of the most well-statted early jobs you can have, also just because of the quick draw effect it has on top of the Warcry. So not just buffing our units with a +1/+1, or potentially even buffing them more if we get more Warcries off. Also the quick draw helps quite a bit early on to get a good start on the board itself. So we're happy to pick them up and put them in this deck for now. Sparkcatcher is basically a more aggressive style of the Grenadin drone, having the 2/1 stat line, but also has the entomb effect instead of the summon effect this time around, to leave behind another 1/1 unit in case it dies. So we're quite happy with that. We can use them to push through blocking units or early game removal our enemy might have. And this works rather well in testing. So I can recommend him, and I'm definitely happy to put them in this list right here. Temple Scribe might look a bit weird, but we really need a card draw unit in this deck, or some kind of card draw effect. And the fact that we get some life is negligible for now, because we are most likely the beatdown deck in every matchup we play. So we will be the aggressor. But the card draw definitely helps, even though sometimes it could be hard to meet the 2 time influence requirement you can see. But still, the card draw is very nice and super decent in this deck, and that's why I chose to pack it into this deck, just to give us more options the longer the game goes. Calderan Gunsmith is a unit I wasn't quite sure of about myself, but this summon effect of every unit we have on the field is 1 damage to the enemy player is just overwhelmingly good. I can only have positive facts about Calderan Gunsmith, but if it comes down on a empty board, it's not impressive. But the summon effect is definitely worth it, especially if we get to build our board we want to build it. Ornamental Daggers is kind of our budget option here. We could most likely also run another card draw card, like for example the Ornate Katana, which is a 3 mana draw card and give you a unit to attack weapon. But Ornamental Daggers just felt nice because of the echo effect, and we can try to push different effects on different units. Also, since we build a wide board, which means having many units on the field, we can use this to our benefit, most likely. This is the card I'm most unsure about, let's put it that way. But it does feel good when it works. Sometimes you draw both, and since they have Echo, you have 4 cards in hand, and you're like, like nice, but I would like to have something else to play. But before I give any more comment on this and what I would like suggest to you, let's keep moving to our spells, and we see the Prevalent Torch that is most likely run in most decks at the moment. Sometimes going as far as splashing the red color into a deck that doesn't really want to run it just to have access to Torch. Rampage, just to get through blockers and dealing damage to the face that if we can't reach it. So Rampage does a really good job, even buffing a small 1/1 Grenadin to a 4/2, sometimes getting a decent blocker out of the way, because I'm not sure if many token lists would run Rampage right now. But since we don't have many options, and that's kind of a problem for Praxis in general if you're on a budget, you are super limited in what you're trying to do and what you can actually use to get to accomplish your goals. So for now, I'm happy to have Rampage on board as well, just like the other units I mentioned earlier. Also, I want to mention that Rakano Outlaw has extremely nice synergy through their quick draw ability. So if a unit would die while Rakano Outlaw attacks and trades with them, it doesn't actually take any damage back. So getting this buff on the Rakano Outlaw can potentially get rid of a really big blocker while conserving your unit. So it's not just pushing through and trying to get through at all costs, but also a kind of conservative measure to keep your units on board as well. Assembly line, just as the Grenadin drone gives us a free 1/1 Grenadins and we play them out directly on the field. And this card just feels nice. I can definitely tell the difference in if I draw this card in the game I play or if it's on the bottom of my deck and I can't see it this game. If I drop this on free, I'm in a perfectly fine spot most of the time, and I'm usually able to finish the game sometime in the future, maybe 2 or 3 turns later, just because of the damage it piles up rather quickly. Rally is being used in this deck as some sort of, if one unit gets blocked and you need like 2 damage to get rid of the blocker while you have 4 or 5 other units out there, don't be afraid to just blow the rally up, because you will get the trade going, you will get rid of the enemy unit, and you will also deal quite a heavy amount of face damage to the enemy. And this is really where rally shines. It's not just building an overwhelming board and then going all in with the rally, but maybe even getting a good trade with the rally and then punishing the opponent for making a block they maybe should have not done. Humbug Swarm is basically like Assembly Line, but it doesn't give us Grenadins, but other token creatures to play with, which would be free 1/1 flying guys. And they really put in work if you draw them and if they get on the board. But it's rather costly at 5 mana and only getting 3 bodies for it if we consider that we have 2 units at 1/1 already. But we don't have better options at this moment, so we have to take this shell and try to make the best out of it. I had some other options or interesting things I wanted to put into the deck, like Living Example, but I realized that it's basically the same as Warcries. And the fact that Warcries are nice is true, but our deck doesn't really require it because we have quite some minions that have a plain text on them saying player XY Grenadin, for example. The Warcry will make our Grenadin drone bigger, yes it will, so we could have a 4/4 Grenadin unit for 1 mana, but the summon effect still only gets us a 1/1 Grenadin. So it's not perfect, and it's kind of lackluster synergy in a way, because we could have a more beneficial card text on a card if we want to go for a Warcry theme. But as mentioned earlier, Oni Ronin and Rakana Outlaw are just super decent cards you can use early on if you're on a budget. And even sometimes in more aggressive, more costly decks, even like a Rakana midrange deck or aggressive Rakana list with some legendary weapons in there, they're still being run and still see play. Also in some Skycrack decks, so red and blue, they're most likely in there trying to tear stuff up. So that was my small introduction. We will get to play some games now and see the deck in action, and maybe you can already see if you like the concept or not. And if you like it, please give me feedback and let me know if you try to mix around different units or what you swap. Also make sure that you try some different spins on this deck on your own. I would not recommend to just copy paste this deck and then go in for games, but check the list yourself, see what you like, see what you maybe don't like. Maybe you really dislike the ticking Grenadin. Well, you could just cut them completely and get rid of them and drop in something you really like. Like maybe a Shogu Standard could work one this year. Or maybe you should consider Granite Waystones, which we already put in. I'm a dumbass, I'm sorry. That's something I should mention probably as well. But that's more or less the thing I was going for here, and we were only using cards of the common and uncommon rarity, so there's nothing in here that should be too hard to get for a new player. And for some reason I can't seem to find the ticking Grenadin right now. Wait, am I... There he is, ticking Grenadin. Use premium, sure, why not? Alright, now with that out of the way, I got some feedback on my Felon budget list yesterday, and that Resolves mentioned, another Eternal content creator mentioned that I should probably get to give you guys some upgrade informations or what else you could in there once you try to transition from budget to maybe a more mid-rangey approach. And this time I'm actually prepared and try to write a decent guide on eternalwarcry.com. I will most likely showcase this later on in the video, not right now. Basically at the end of the video there will probably be some small information about that, showcasing what options you have. Also, we just go over most of the bread and butter units yet again, just to make sure that you guys understand the concept if you're new and you don't quite know where to start. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now. And I will catch you guys in a moment in the first game of the evening. And we are in game number 1. And we can see a hand that looks rather promising, so I think we will keep it. We got 2 1-drops, which is amazing for what we try to achieve. And I think at this point we are dropping the Oni Ronin first to start getting Warcries in for potential units we will draw. We also see that we potentially get the assembly line on curve. We will play both the Grenadin drone and Oni Ronin out here. Just building or trying to build an overwhelming board. Our opponent is in red and shadow, so that means most likely a Stone Scar deck of some sort. We see a torch coming down already, which is amazing for us. Not much else going on. Sequence-wise, I think I prefer Assembly Line over the buffed Rakano Outlaw right now. We get yet another Warcry in from the Oni Ronin and start to deal face damage as good as we can. And as you can see, we're already at the part where we would like to have some refill in hand, just because we drew all the efficient stuff early on. Not much to think about right now. This is kind of the game plan. That's interesting. That was rather quick. So as you can see, if this deck works, it just works. And even if they drop one unit or one spell per turn, the fact that we drop more than one unit each turn, if stuff goes right, makes us out-tempo the opponent extremely hard. So if they don't have a sweep, like Hailstorm or Thunderstorm or Harsh Rule, it's gonna be hard for them to come back. Maybe Lifesteal could work in some ways, while blocking and trading with our units. But that was just overwhelming success here, and I'm pretty glad this worked out. So I guess we just go into game number 2. So I think at this point the game plan should be rather obvious. Develop units, try to play on curve as often as you can, meaning if you have free mana, don't drop the Rakana Outlaw in that moment, but rather go for the assembly line, which was right play as you could see. Most likely the concession would have come with the Rakana Outlaw either, but try to be as efficient with your power or mana, depending on what your background might be, and just play on curve, get strong units out there. Also, let's quickly analyze this hand. We have early interaction with Torch, we have redraw, but we have no time. We have one Grenadin drone and one ticking, so redrawing should be fine here. We don't just want to play 2 units and then be out of options. That's pretty much the completely different hand we had earlier. This is most likely the slowest start this deck can have, and sometimes it makes me feel like I want to ditch the Humbug Swarm altogether, because even though we only run 2 of them, it feels like they always end up in our starting hand for no reason. So maybe some bad 1 or 2 drop that doesn't really do much but is playable could be good enough in this case. But that's playing devil's advocate at this point. It's rather unfortunate to get a hand like this, let's put it that way. We do get the Oni Ronin though, which is something. And seeing the colors our opponent runs lets me know that there's probably gonna be some Hailstorm action or Harsh Rule. So we're holding back for now. We're not gonna buff Ornamental Daggers. Also, we should expect a Vanquish maybe by our opponent. And this does look like maybe Chalice running Strategize and Aurelian Merchant. And that's nothing you should have to worry about just yet. You will probably see it in action soonish. And it doesn't feel nice to play against this deck, but there's nothing we can do right now. I think at this point we accept the fact that they could have answers against our strategy, which they have, and we go for an early aggression. So Vanquish could punish us as well as Hailstorm. Or if they feel extremely threatened for no reason, maybe even... Basically every sweeper could punish us right now, and most likely make their units survive as well. I think they want to hold back. They didn't play a power, so maybe they want to pretend like they have nothing here. But I'm gonna play it slow. I don't mind getting 4 damage into the face every turn. And if I would be on the opposing end right now, I would probably also hold back, pretending to not have an answer. But as mentioned earlier, if they want to sweep this board already, just go for it and have fun. We have easy ways to refill the board. Could also be that they're just stuck on power right now and we give them extra time to draw, which is something we have to consider at every point in the game. They use a stand together here. Okay. They might want to block the 4 damage in case I think I would drop Rally. Not in this case though. Let's just rack up the damage. We get the Entomb effect of the Spark Catcher. Now they decide to pull the trigger. No? Okay. That's interesting to see. I think depending on the blocks our opponent will make, we will decide to either use Humbug Swarm or go for Lethal. They want to trade as small as possible. We have 7, 8 plus... Oh damn, Matha. So we get +2, this makes 6, 5. Let's go. So we learned in that game that going wide on board and not blocking early on might be a mistake from our opponent's side. They could have gone for the Oni Ronin a bit earlier, just blocking the damage and just agreeing to the fact that I could have something to blow them out, which we had. But we got so much damage in for no actual reason that they didn't even get to the part to play out their own strategy. And even if they had like 6 sixes and 2 fives and 1 fours on the field, it didn't really matter because we had the tempo on the game. And dropping a 6-6 in that turn does nothing, especially if we have more minions or units. So keep that in mind. And I think this is exactly a nice game to showcase what the budget token stack can actually do, even against players who drop legendaries on curve or whatever. And that worked rather nicely, so I'm really happy about that yet again. Looks like we got some decent games going on right now. So I just realized that the Scrap Hound in the red color is actually also Grenadin and can sacrifice another Grenadin to get a +4/+4 stat buff for 4 mana. And I decided to put that into the deck even though we're already recording, but I don't mind that. I guess we can just see together if it works out or not and if it's a good replacement. I'm not even sure what I'd put out. I think the Humbug Swarms got cut at this point. But I have to consider that again after this game because I'm not quite sure. We got Oni Ronin, we got Rakano Outlaw. That's a good start for an aggressive strategy. We play Seed of Impulse this time first. Get the Oni Ronin out there. We can play another Seed of Impulse before we start checking down our sigils. We see Roland's Favor. Interesting, this might be mono green. Haven't seen Roland's Favor in quite some time, might actually be years at this point. We do have a nice follow-up with the ticking Grenadin, but I think we're gonna go for the Fire Zitcher here because we do have the Granite Waystone. Let's try to get some Warcries off as well. Iron Fist Chancellor. That's rather nice. Haven't seen that card in quite some time either. I think we're gonna attack like this, and if they go for a block with the ticking Grenadin or the Oni Ronin, we go for a rally here. And they might have something in back. It looks like they don't. This could be good enough to win the game here. Yep, we did win. Amazing. So as you can see, no Scrap Hound this game, sadly. But let's quickly get into the deck list and actually check what I put out, just so you guys are on top. Obviously, I will edit the deck list. I got rid of both Humbug Swarms and both Ornamental Daggers, right? Makes sense. So we put in this little guy. Let's showcase him in full force. Scrap Hound, ultimate, pay 4 and sacrifice another unit to give Scrap Hound +2/+2. If it was a Grenadin, Scrap Hound instead gets +5/+5, making the Scrap Hound a 6/6 unit on board as a 1/1, which is pretty nice. And we could also consider as a potential upgrade in case you do have cards or want to craft something, the Pyro Knight, and nearly go out of the Time faction and maybe even make this a mono red deck because we're only running Temple Scribe, while we could also run the Ornate Katana. Here we go, Ornate Katana, draw a card. This could potentially put us even further ahead. So maybe you're like, dude, you try to showcase a deck and you're constantly changing it even right now. Like, why should I even take this as granted or whatever? And that could be a fair point. But as I play this deck, and I played quite a bit today, which I can showcase here real quick. I tried to build quite a bit of... Oh, I played Event as well, yeah. But as you can see, even after I was done with the event. I went back into and got something that feels like 50-50, which wasn't quite there yet, but I kept iterating on the list, and I think we're in a pretty decent spot right now. And maybe let's actually do this real quick. Let's go on cards. Let's clone this deck here. We got budget tokens number 2. Let's shop the Temple Scribe completely out of there. Let's get rid of time sigils we don't have to use anymore, which is pretty decent as well. And let's actually do this real quick. And if you don't like this, I will probably provide some form for you to skip this. But I think this is the actual part where a budget decks really shine. Because right now we actively decide on different things we could do. Just because we have the option to do what we want in this game, and we don't have to just run whatever is being told or whatever. We can still make active decisions on our own. If we like something, we go for it. If we don't like something, we don't go for it. So this deck went from a Praxis 50-50 deck to a Praxis 75 and 25% in time, and now we are at an actual mono fire deck, which is interesting. Mono fire is probably not too bad, considering we were already nearly running a mono fire deck here. But I might even use this and make this another guide, actually. This is interesting because I'm not sure myself on which way I should take this, because why would I offer you a worse version of a deck when we can just go into mono fire and make this more consistent even, which is a sad thing to say. But as mentioned, the options for yellow for a token deck without Xenon Obelisk, which is a relic that provides buffs for your units, is rather obnoxious to handle. And we have plenty of other decks we can showcase. We have some kind of big Praxis where we use beefier units. We got budget Elysian, which is time and blue. We got budget Combre, which felt like the weakest deck, just so you got a heads up. And we got the budget Felon we showcased yesterday. Skycrack budget felt rather decent as well. And we have two different options with the Illusion deck. One that goes for a straightforward plan and one that has an Inspire package. So I'm trying to give as many options as I can, because I don't think I want to be the guy telling a new player which decks to use and tackle without giving them options and see if they even like the playstyle or something else. So this might become some kind of overview video maybe. Not quite sure about that yet, but I guess we go as we see. This looks okay. I think we're gonna keep it. Nyctotraxian, so we are against some janky brew, which is good to know. We can probably capitalize on this in case they miss their sweepers. They go for a Praxis banner, and we will go for both our 1-drops here. We start to get the early aggression going right now. Most likely we will go for a Ornate Katana here. And I think that's fair. We put it on here because we basically just want the card draw right now. We're not gonna hold back because of a 2-1. We will keep going. We could have attacked a bit conservatively, but this is fine. This way we got the attention of the Scrap Hound, which still could have some potential stuff to do later on in the game. So I'm quite happy about that. We kind of used the weapon as a distraction, and I don't think we should count that game. Let's put another one. That was probably a rather bad draw for them. So yeah, I really hope I don't alienate you guys right now, but budget decks on their own should always evolve, if that makes sense. If a new set drops, there are quite some things you could explore. And I remember the starting decks I had back then are nowhere close to what they are right now. And I think that's a fair thing to say. And this way we also get a feeling of what we like and what we don't like, which is also rather important if we want to spend a lot of time and getting our collection going. So I'm back for some additional information at the end of the video, which I will most likely add to most of the budget lists, just to give some additional hints and maybe talking about the whole situation that just came up. And I feel kind of weird right now because I'm not quite sure where I want to toss this and if I should use it at all, but I think this could be an interesting spin for a newer player to see how you can use a deck shell and maybe iterate on yourself or on your own and see what kind of options you have potentially and see how you want to evolve the deck in general. So I think we're gonna leave it like this because I could most likely look for some decent early game units like maybe even the Ruthless Stranger in the 1 mana slot, this guy here, and add him to the deck. We can think about giving some honorable mentions like Pyro Knight here. But let's quickly have a look and see what we could potentially do with this. I really like the Ornate Katana we put into our Monofire deck for now. But let's actually go for the time units and see what could work here. A 1/1 for 1. When we gain life, we get +1/+1 isn't really what we're looking for. I was playtesting earlier with the whole Inspire package in time, which means the 2/1 living example that gives other units +1/+1. But it's basically like a Warcry, so I decided to cut it because most Grenadins won't actually like it because you might get a 2/2 body or even like a 3/2 here. But the text on the summon will still be a 1/1 Grenadin. So I'm not really sure if that's the right way to take this whole thing. But as you've seen earlier, this list does pack a punch. But it feels like we could, just for consistency's sake, make it better by making it mono fire, which is what I did just now. But I think I will just combine the two and show where we transitioned and where we got the impulses from and how it worked out in the end. And I think this is a really decent start for a player on a budget to get some ideas on where to go. And I'm pretty sure something like this will not happen again because other colors just have better options, it feels like. And obviously we can put in all the good stuff like Teacher of Humility and later Heart of the Vault and stuff like that. But this is not what this is about right now. There could have been a point made for Synchronized Strike to be added, but a +1/+1 doesn't do too much for us, sadly. Traymaker could have been used. It's a rather aggressive unit in the 2 mana slot. We could use the Temple Scribe for more draw. We could use Ember Acolytes. But then we would already transition in some kind of mid-range that tries to get some bigger units out. And this is where I have my other list for. So right now I think we're at a good spot. Let's actually not waste too much more time and let you guys go. We just keep budget tokens like this in this way. We will use the Calderon Gunsmith and the Humbug Swarms to get oppressive boards and then punish our opponent for not drawing what they need. We will also keep the Temple Scribe for now, but we could potentially change the daggers to Ornate Katanas anyways if we feel like doing that, and that's a smart thing to do in my opinion. We got the Praxis list, which is not Praxis anymore, as you can see it's shallow here. And we got the Monofire red aggression lists. Let's call this actually budget Monofire instead of budget tokens, because tokens is kind of reserved for some kind of Praxis deck. At least most people have that. When they hear tokens, they think about Praxis. So I'm not trying to mislead anyone here. Let's call it budget Monofire. Everything in here has the same game plan. We have decent synergies, And I think this is a very good place to start for a new player. And I think I said that like 20 times in this video. So since I'm gonna repeat myself, I think I'm gonna cut here. Thank you very much for all your time and for sticking with me. If you have an idea on how to resolve this whole issue, please let me know. But as mentioned, I think this could have some worth somewhere for someone out there. So I'm gonna keep it like this and maybe treat it like some kind of mistakes were made. What can you learn from it? And try to release both lists that we came up with and post them on Warcry for your, just so you have a resource you can come back to in case you feel like. And thanks for having me, and we see each other on the next video. Thank you very much.